So today we're going to go through and approach this a little bit differently because we figured why not, for some dramatic irony, approach this more like a classic style mediated man cave of conversating about past games that have just happened. So we figured ride the elephant in the room because why not? Going through this video production process, we decided that it made more sense to include more topics. Initially we were only aiming for 3, but with all the research that we were doing, we ended up finding a lot more than 3. So we figured to just it'd make more sense to really dig into each one of them a little bit and just find some good nuggets of data to support certain things.
Especially since we're doing more of a forum, just where we talk back and forth, it makes it a lot easier just to use the vocabulary that we learned in class and not limit ourselves to just 3.
And now, our feature presentation.
Hello and welcome to our 323 final video. My name's David Dixon and I'm joined remotely by...
Griffin Fess.
Alright, so today we're going to be going through an analysis of the NBA and WNBA games from the 2018 finals. Specifically, we're going to be looking at games, the first game of each final for both the NBA and the WNBA, and who was playing for those, by the way.
So for the NBA, we had the Cleveland Cavaliers versus the Golden State Warriors, which took place on May 31st. And then for the WNBA, we had the Seattle Storm versus the Washington Mystics on September 7th.
Exactly. Okay, so starting out with the beginning one, gender marking, and this one we both thought was just blatantly obvious.
Yeah.
Because it's in the names.
Yeah, exactly. This is in relation to the obvious WNBA and NBA titles for both of these leagues. The NBA is the National Basketball Association, and the WNBA is the Women's National Basketball Association.
Mm-hmm.
So gender marking is very obvious because it's the differentiation of only women events rather than men's and women's.
Mm-hmm. The other obvious thing that really stood out to us, too, is the viewership numbers between the two things. And I think we might have previously mentioned those. But that was, you have those numbers, Griffin. What were they?
Yeah. So it was 13.6 million viewers for the NBA game and 290,000 viewers for the WNBA game.
Yeah, and that's a pretty drastic difference. And then on top of that, you made a really interesting observation about the people in attendance.
Yeah,
so we things as well.
Yeah, we think this all ties into the idea of male-centered, which is the idea that men and men's lives are the expected focus of attention. And another thing that we noticed was that there were a lot of known stars at the NBA game that were panned and shown throughout the crowd. And this wasn't the case at the WNBA game.
Yeah, there were a distinct lack of stars and people at the WNBA game.
The next topic that we're going to cover for this is essentialism.
For those of you who don't know, essentialism is basically the viewpoint that assumes natural differences between two groups of people, here being male and female.
So with essentialism, we're going to be focusing on the rules, specifically the differences in rules between the NBA and the WNBA. Mm-hmm. We noticed some pretty obvious ones that really pointed to an essentialism kind of root cause. And one of the initial ones that's kind of a very obvious one is a difference in basketball size between the two associations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the NBA, the circumference of the basketball is 29.5 inches, whereas in WNBA, the circumference is 28.5 inches. Another difference that we saw was with respect to the three-point line.
For the WNBA, the three-point line is only 22 feet from the center of the basket, while for the NBA, it's 23 feet and 9 inches, or 23.75 feet. In addition to this, we noticed another big difference being the amount of games played in the season per team.
Yeah, so in the WNBA, they only play 34 games per season, while in the NBA, they have a full season of 82 games. One thing that David noticed for this is that the WNBA only does have 12 teams, while the NBA has 30, so that could be a variable that comes into play.
Yeah, it might be in some way confounding in the way that we're trying to draw a correlation or causation here, but something to keep in mind. However, it's still a pretty drastic statistic that there's, a difference between 34 and 82, which isn't even half.
Yeah, and then even though they do have a shorter season, they also have a shorter postseason, with each round only being a series of 5 games, while in the NBA, each round is a series of 7 games.
One of the other interesting things that we noticed as well, and this is something that's changed, we were able to find the rules of the WNBA in 1998. And one of the big differences that they had there was instead of using quarters, they used halves. So instead of doing the 12-minute quarters that the NBA does, they were doing 2 20-minute halves. Now, we were able to look at the rule book of this year, and unfortunately we weren't able to pinpoint the exact point when this changed, but we noticed that it has since been adjusted so that the women are now playing in quarters just like the men are. However, they're only doing 10-minute halves instead of 12-minute halves, so that's another thing that really kind of ties into the essentialism logic that went into creating these rules. Another thing that really stood out to us while watching both of these games was the gender regimes that were in place here. And if you wanted to cover the definition on this for me.
Yeah, so the gender regime being the current state of sexual politics was apparent with respect to the announcers and the coaches for the NBA and the WNBA. With the coaches, 30 out of the 30 NBA head coaches are male, and 7 out of the 12 head coaches in the NBA or WNBA are male. In the NBA, there has never actually been a female head coach, but there is progress being made with the first assistant coach being female.
Yeah, where's this tie into next? I feel like we went through that one pretty fast. Nice. Go us. Alright, I'm gonna... I kind of want to do that one again, except I can cover the gender regime definition, and then you can just kind of detail.
Yeah.
Because I feel like otherwise you have that weird transition. I don't know how well that works. One sec. My mouse is stuck in the middle of the screen. No! Damn it. I just locked my computer. Okay. All right. One of the other things that really stood out to us when watching both of these games was the topic of gender regimes. And gender regimes are defined as the current state of play of gender politics. We really noticed a lot of this here, and there are some specifics that Griffin's going to get into for us.
Yeah, so we noticed this with respect to the announcers and the coaches of both the NBA and the WNBA. In the coaches department, we had 30 out of 30 NBA head coaches being male without ever having a female head coach. There is progress being made with the first assistant female head coach being named a couple years back, but in the WNBA, we have 7 out of the 12 head coaches being male.
Mm-hmm. Which comes out to a staggering 88% of head coaches male, or I feel like it's a bit more impactful, 37 out of 42 professional basketball coaches in total are just male, which is a really drastic difference there. One of the other areas that we saw this in, as you'd mentioned earlier, was the announcers. And we saw it a little bit in this one, but I feel like in more games, if we were to go in and do a little bit more research in this, we'd really see a lot more of this, which is the imbalance of announcers as far as their gender.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of NBA basketball, and I can't remember maybe one female announcer. Mostly it's male announcers and then a female sideline reporter.
Another interesting thing that we noticed in the WNBA game was the fact that there was only one female announcer and then there was one male announcer, and both of the coaches for the teams that were playing in the final were men. The final topic that we're going to cover today is really kind of a conglomeration of a few topics, but it fits best under the umbrella term of toxic masculinity. Griffin found a really great example, actually 2 examples of this, based on the way the NBA players were acting.
Yeah, so the 2 examples I found were obviously from the NBA Finals Game 1 that we mentioned that we watched earlier. Draymond Green has always been known as a very out there, angry.
Here, 1 second. You froze for a second, so not your fault at all. But let's redo that.
I wasn't really. I'm okay with that take being.
No worries. I figured I'd just cut you off and we can just go for it.
Cool. Just want to lead it back in and then.
Yeah, actually, I think I might do my quick little intro, just because I'm not stumbling over it, so I'll just knock it out. And then it's one less thing that we have to, cut around, which will be nice. All right, so for our final topic, we are going to cover a pretty large category of things, but it fits best, I think, under the umbrella term of toxic masculinity and man box. We found a few really great examples of this, specifically in this game that we were watching, and not just in the thing as a whole, and Griffin has the specifics on those.
So we found 2 cases in this game where some players are yelling and screaming after getting a foul called. The first one was Draymond Green poking LeBron in the eye, which should be an obvious foul, and even though it was called, he was very furious and mad at the officials. Same thing in the second case to a lesser degree, but both of these were never seen in the WNBA game.
Yeah, it was a very big difference in the physicality of the 2 games.
Exactly. I think the raw emotion that you're allowed to show in an NBA game is a lot more than can be shown in a WNBA game.
The other thing too that we discovered, which was a little bit less specific to this one, it didn't show up in this game, but it's a larger phenomenon that we figured kind of fit in with the total research that we were doing. And that was some of the terms that are used by announcers in the NBA.
As I said earlier, I've watched a lot of NBA games, and a lot of NBA announcers have their own phrase that they use whenever the same thing happens over and over again. For example, a slam dunk. This one announcer, and it's one that just came to me right off the top of my head, he says that's a man's jam after any really strong dunk or a dunk on someone or something like that. And I think this is a great example of a male-dominated case. Do you have the definition of that in front of you, David?
Yes, I do actually. So male-dominated is defined as so that ability and performance qualifications are associated with manhood and men, therefore being qualified in sports means possessing masculine characteristics or performing like a man.
So I think this is right off that.
Oh yeah, definitely a really great example of that one.
Yeah, I was going to say, why do you think there's such a disparity between the NBA and the WNBA in terms of the viewership ratings? Does it have to do with their TV spots, media coverage on them, or is it something else? David, I think you have the second question.
Yeah, it actually kind of ties on to your last one, and that is, what do you think the impact of the gradual synchronization of rules between the WNBA and the NBA will have on the popularity and viewership of the WNBA? From 1998, there were a whole bunch of differences. They were on halves instead of quarters, all kinds of stuff. When we looked at the rules more recently, there's a lot more synchronization. They're on quarters now. They're on very similar timed quarters, although they're not equivalent yet. So with that trend going in the direction that it's going, does it make sense with what's going to happen next? Is that going to have an impact?
So our very last question and our last thing to say is, how impactful is the current gender regime of announcers and coaches of 2 developing players?
Yeah, and so ponder on these questions, think of them, submit your ideas, comments below, and we've enjoyed having you with us on this journey.
Hope you enjoyed the video.